Hey, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another tutorial. In this tutorial I'll be showing you guys how I replace an extra objects, or for example these light poles, or like anybody walking into, or anybody that's showing in your photo frame or anything like that. So we're gonna go from something that looks like this to something like this, and then we're gonna go ahead and open this up in Photoshop and go ahead and delete all those extra distracting light poles, and all of that stuff. So yeah, so let's go. Let me just go ahead and reset, go back to the photo. I'm gonna go ahead and reset. So one of the tips that I can highly recommend is whenever you guys shooting outside and taking photos or anything like that, try not to get too many objects, like distracting object in your photo, because when you go and edit, and even though I'm gonna show you guys how to take anything out from your photo, if you taking too much stuff out or replacing like most of the stuff, you will notice that it will not look natural. So try to go and whenever you're taking photo, try not to get too many objects in the photo. So yeah, so I'm gonna be using this photo, and I'm gonna go ahead and do my basic adjustment, do some coloring and all of that. If you guys haven't watched my first video that shows you how the basic tutorial, or like basic tools that I use to basically edit my photo, exposure, highlights, and all of these options on the side of this in Lightroom. So yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward this part so you guys don't have to sit for another 15 minutes watch me edit a simple photo. And yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and catch you guys whenever when I'm done editing this photo, and then we're gonna go ahead and open this up in a Photoshop and go from there. So catch you guys in a Okay, so now this is just a basic quick edit that I just did just for the sake of the tutorial. So now we have the basic editing, and so what we want to do is basically remove all of these light poles, just because it's distracting, and I like my photos to be cleaner, and I want the focus of anybody looking at this photo to be on the car, and I feel like these poles are a little bit too distracting for a photo. So I'm gonna go ahead. So what you guys gonna do is basically you go ahead and right click on the photo and do edit in Adobe Photoshop, and what this gonna do is basically open that photo that you just edit in Adobe Photoshop, and from there any edit you do in Photoshop and save is gonna automatically go back to Lightroom, and it's gonna show you that edit. So yeah, so now we have opened this up in Photoshop. So what I'm gonna do, hit if you're in I edit my photos in Mac, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit Command J. What this gonna do is basically make a copy of the background layer, so I can go ahead and hide this, so I can basically work on a copy, and if I mess up anything on a copy, I can always go back to the original photo and start over. So what I'm gonna do is so one of the tools that I mostly use, so something like this open object and there's not a lot of stuff right next to it, what I do is basically I use it's called a patch tool. So if it's on the left hand side in the toolbar, so it's called patch tool. Either that, or you can just hit J on your keyboard and it'll show patch tool. So what this will do is basically, so what you want to do is basically go ahead and go around the object that you want to replace or remove from the photo, and go ahead and while holding down, go ahead and trace around it, and you'll see these marching ants, and then you'll see an arrow, and what you're gonna do is basically click on it, hold it, and drag it to right next to where it shows like a similar color, and leave it off. And then what I'm gonna do is hit Command D to deselect that area. So as you can guys see that Photoshop has been is getting really good at like color matching what's around its object. So as you can see that there's a little bit of like a darker hue. So what I'm gonna do is basically hit S on the keyboard. What this brings up is basically a clone tool. So as you can see, there's a clone stamp tool, so hitting S, and then what I'm gonna do is hit a bracket and then make the tool bigger. Or what you can do is while holding Option Control, click on your mouse, it's gonna show, so if you go up or down, it's gonna show the opacity, or basically opacity and or hardness, you can say. And then if you go left and right, it's gonna show how big the circle or how big the selection is. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do this, and then select it like hardness, 0 hardness. And what I'm gonna do is go ahead and while holding Option, I'm gonna go ahead and select a color right next to it. What this gonna do is basically it's gonna clone that color on top of this. So I'm gonna go ahead and click, and as you can see, you can hardly see the basically the darker color that was showing before. And something like right here, what I'm gonna do is basically make my selection or maybe clone stamp tool a little bit smaller, maybe to like a little bit bigger than the pole. So I'm gonna go and do this. So what I'm gonna do right here is basically anytime you guys have diagonal lines or anything like that, what you want to do is basically same thing, while holding Option, you're gonna click on this diagonal line next to it. So what this gonna do is basically it's gonna show you what it's gonna replace or how it's gonna look like. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click on it, I'm gonna go up and a little bit up. So what it is basically doing is replacing. As you can see, there's a plus sign right next to the circle. What this doing is basically is taking the plus sign, whatever on the plus sign is basically replacing in the circle. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep going down, and make sure not to move your mouse a lot, because as you can see that there are lines right here. So for example, let's say if I click on this and I go right here, and if I go like all over the place, you guys will see that the lines are not matching. And that's like one of the main thing in Photoshop, that is just basically it's bunch of practice. If you wanna, like you'll get good at it. So as I'm getting closer to the car, what I'm gonna do is make the selection tool smaller. I'm gonna go ahead and click, and then I'm gonna slowly cut away from the car. So I'm gonna do the same thing right here, basically select this line right next to it so I can clone it, and I'm gonna go ahead and take this out too. And basically, so what I'm gonna do is right here is basically I want to take this line art from this wall. So what I'm gonna do is basically make my selection circle bigger, holding Option, click on this line, go directly down, so it will show you the line directly underneath, and I'm gonna go ahead and across, and it's basically gonna replace whatever is showing at the top down below. And I'm gonna keep doing this until I'll match the lines what is showing above, and go ahead and take this speed limit sign out. I'm gonna basically go ahead and do this, and as you can see that there's a big difference in color, so there's a more darker shade here than the hair. What I'm gonna do is basically go ahead and take the opacity down. What this gonna do is basically blend the darker and the lighter colors. So and what I'm gonna do is basically go ahead right here, and I'm gonna just slowly paint around and do this. So if you zoom out, you can see that you can kind of see that I might have did something there, but somebody who's looking at this photo and not knowing that this is edited or had been taken something out, they will not notice that. So yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and do the same step for this pole. So I'm gonna go ahead, hit command, just letter J. I'm gonna go ahead and trace around, and you'll see marching ants, and then I'm gonna go ahead and drag it right here until it doesn't show anymore. I'm gonna go ahead and let off the click, hit command D, which is gonna unselect, and you can see that it did a pretty good job of replacing that. But you can see right here that Photoshop was having a hard time to kind of couldn't recognize what it wanted here, so it just did a random color. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and hit letter S, which is a clone tool, make the clone stamp a little bit bigger. Go ahead, select the well, I'm gonna go opacity 100%. I'm gonna go ahead, select the color around it, and I'm gonna go ahead and paint around it. So I'm gonna go ahead and make the stamp tool a bit smaller, and I'm gonna go ahead and then make this edge a little bit more. So what I'm gonna do is basically select this line and then make the clone stamp a little bit bigger. I'm gonna try to align the top part to the bottom, and I'm gonna go ahead and go left and right, which is gonna replace the image was showing on the left on the right. And as you can see, it did a pretty good job. I'm gonna go ahead and replace these trees branches that's showing on where I don't want to be showing, and I'm gonna go ahead and do the similar thing right here. And as soon as I get closer to the car, I make my tool smaller so it's easier for me, so I don't delete any part of the car. So I'm gonna go ahead, and as you can see, it did a pretty good job. I'm gonna go ahead and make the brush a little bit bigger. I'm gonna go ahead and take what's next to the line, and you can always hit Command Z to undo whatever you have done. I'm gonna make the tool smaller and go ahead and try to match these colors we're showing on the wall. And I'm gonna do the same thing, make the opacity down around 39-40%, whatever you feel like it's gonna do the best for your guys' photos, and go ahead and go around the edges so I can blend the colors. I'm gonna do the same thing here. Let's keep. I'm gonna go ahead and do this. So as you can see that it did a pretty good job. I'm gonna go ahead and clone this for a second, just because it's a little bit. And as you can see that if you zoom out all the way out, and then you can't really tell that I've cloned something there or I've taken something out. So I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward this, and yeah, I'll catch you guys when I have all the polls out from this photo. And yeah, so I'll catch you guys in a minute. Turn on the original. So this is what it looked like, and this is what it looks like after we clone and the extra stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and also take these take this little bit bad stuff out of the road, so it looks a little bit cleaner. I'm basically using the same clone tool and trying to match the stuff around it. And yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and also actually place this whole thing. So, and I'm gonna go ahead and click the edge, try to match, and then keep clicking until I see. I'm gonna go ahead and make the clone stamp a little bit smaller, make the opacity down, and yeah, so this is what the final image will look like. As you can see, we went from this to this, and I'm gonna go ahead and hit Command S, which is gonna save the image, and we're gonna go ahead and close this out. And if we go back to our Lightroom, and it basically brings in another image that looks similar to that. So there we go. Yes. So yeah, so this was our original. This is what it looks like after I edited, and this is what after it looked like after editing in the Photoshop. So yeah, so hopefully you guys liked this, my second video. And yeah, if you guys have any questions regarding anything, hit me up on Instagram, or go ahead and write down in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and comment if you have any questions, and also don't forget to follow me on Instagram.